You know what's intriguing? While 115 million viewers are shouting at their televisions this Sunday, there's this whole invisible demographic who truly could not care less. And I'm not referring to people faking apathy for attention. I mean the individuals who view the Super Bowl frenzy the same way you might view, say, competitive ice sculpting, just total emotional indifference. And here's what society misses. For certain folks, the championship game just doesn't resonate the same way whatsoever. So, let's dive into it. The first thing to grasp is that caring about athletics isn't a default human setting. The brain doesn't emerge from the womb wired to lose its mind over a touchdown. What's actually occurring when fans get obsessed with the Super Bowl is this complex web of tribal identity, feeling like you personally know the athletes even though you definitely don't. And there's actually a psychological term for this, basking in reflected glory. Essentially, your brain delivers a dopamine rush when your franchise wins, even though you did absolutely nothing except sit on your sofa in the right area code. For those who ignore the Super Bowl, watching that happen to others is like, all right, neat. I suppose that specific trigger just doesn't hit me the same way. There's actually some fascinating research from the Journal of Consumer Psychology revealing that humans possess wildly different optimal stimulation levels. Some minds crave high-intensity, emotionally charged events, while others find that exact intensity completely aversive. Neither is better. They're merely different frequencies. Therefore, when someone mentions they don't care about the big game, they aren't necessarily trying to be edgy or contrarian. They might simply be someone whose nervous system favors lower-intensity environments. The chaos and emotional weight of a 3-hour match with endless momentum shifts genuinely might feel draining rather than exhilarating. And here's where it becomes psychologically dense. Humans are inherently tribal, right? We survived as a species by forming groups and competing against rival groups. Sports tap into that primal collective identity. I know that sounds extreme, but the emotional reaction to my squad won versus their squad won mirrors a lot of the same patterns as ancient in-group versus out-group dynamics, but not everybody feels that pull with equal intensity. Some folks might derive their sense of community from reading clubs or niche internet forums about mechanical keyboards, or literally anything that doesn't involve watching grown adults give each other concussions over a leather ball. They're not abandoning community itself. They've just located it elsewhere, in spaces that don't force them to memorize passing statistics or argue over whether that was actually a catch. Now, let's discuss a factor that might explain part of this disconnect: locus of control. There's this principle in psychology where individuals develop either an internal or external locus of control. Essentially, do you prefer focusing your energy on matters you can influence, or are you fine investing emotionally in events entirely outside your control? Consider what happens when watching a game. You're yelling at a monitor, you're manifesting a field goal, you're wearing your fortunate socks, but absolutely none of it alters what happens on the turf. Some individuals are totally okay with that. The emotional ride is the point. Others might find that fundamentally frustrating. They'd rather expend emotional energy on projects where their effort yields a direct outcome. Neither perspective is wrong. They are just differing psychological tendencies. Oh, and let's not ignore the elephant in the room: overstimulation. Honestly, nobody ever mentions how modern existence already feels like being bombarded with notifications, strict deadlines, random messages about a TikTok you missed, political dumpster fires, and financial stress. For a lot of people, the Super Bowl is just another event attempting to hijack your attention and mental energy. Like, can we just get a break? Especially for those who are wired a bit differently, the ones psychologists label highly sensitive, which apparently makes up roughly 1 in 5 of us. For them, Super Bowl gatherings are essentially a 3-hour sensory assault that leaves them exhausted for days. The bright lights, the sheer noise, the endless chatter. What constitutes a party for some is a full-blown endurance test for others. And here is another factor. Nobody really discusses how much humans vary when it comes to managing uncertainty. There is research showing that folks differ dramatically in how comfortable they are with unpredictability and ambiguity. Athletics are fundamentally unpredictable. You never know what is going to happen next, and that's supposed to be part of the thrill. But for individuals with lower uncertainty tolerance, that same unpredictability often feels more like stress than excitement. They aren't enjoying the suspense at all. They're just uncomfortable the entire time. And when you pair that with the fact that the final score literally doesn't impact your actual life, sitting through 3 hours of fabricated tension for zero payoff starts feeling less like entertainment and a lot more like voluntary anxiety. It is the same reason some viewers love horror films while others can't stomach them. Different nervous systems possess different relationships with stress and uncertainty, even when it is just for fun. And then there is the big fuss everyone makes regarding tradition and ritual. The Super Bowl isn't merely a football game anymore. It is this massive cultural spectacle featuring the commercials, the halftime show, the themed snacks, the entire circus. If football doesn't really captivate you, all that added hype just makes the situation worse. It's like being surrounded by crowds pretending to be super into something you simply don't get, and you are expected to join in, discuss the ads, and fake that you care. It feels kind of artificial, honestly. You end up watching everyone else get overly worked up over something you find completely random, and that strange disconnect can leave you feeling like the only person in the building who missed the memo. It isn't just boring, it's actually kind of lonely in a way that is hard to articulate. But let's be realistic about something else. Sometimes there is no deep psychological explanation. Sometimes people just dislike football the exact same way some people despise cilantro, techno music, or true crime podcasts. We have become so obsessed with pathologizing every difference that we forget humans simply have different tastes. Shocking, I know. The person who couldn't care less about the Super Bowl might be intensely passionate about Formula One, Olympic curling, or literally anything else. And that preference doesn't require a neurological justification. The societal expectation that everyone should care is honestly much weirder than not caring. What I find most intriguing is how uncomfortable it makes certain people when someone admits they don't care about the Super Bowl. There is this immediate defensiveness, almost like you've insulted someone's mother. And that specific reaction tells you everything about how sports operate as identity markers in our culture. When you reject the Super Bowl, some fans hear it as rejecting them, their core values, their entire social world. It isn't actually about the game itself. It's about belonging, shared experiences, and perhaps some underlying anxiety that if too many people opt out, the whole event loses its cultural weight. So, if you happen to be someone who doesn't care about the Super Bowl, there is likely a mix of factors at play. Maybe your optimal stimulation level just runs lower. Maybe you prefer investing energy in areas you can directly influence. Maybe you just aren't wired to get hyped about competitive sports. Maybe you find the manufactured spectacle totally exhausting. Maybe uncertainty feels far more like stress than fun. Or maybe you just genuinely find the sport boring. And that is the entire explanation. All of those are completely valid ways to navigate life. And if you are someone who lives for the Super Bowl, that is equally valid. We do not all have to experience the world the exact same way. And honestly, that is probably the only reason human society functions at all. You can have 115 million citizens losing their minds over a football broadcast while another massive segment is perfectly content doing literally anything else. And somehow we all still coexist. That's it. That is the whole point. If this resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe. And if you wish to support these deep dives, hit that join button to become a channel member. I would genuinely appreciate your support.